It was as big as the World Series, got more attention than the NFL. Of course, it was the election this year. A big shakeup and a change in Washington has a lot of local communities concerned, optimistic, or scratching their heads. Today on the county seat, we will take a county perspective and look at the runs, hits, and errors of our current election cycle. First, let's start with a little closer look at how the county and their representatives feel about it.
Every election cycle, the outcomes have an impact on county governments. New county officials, state senators, and House representatives are elected into office, and each one brings new ideas and priorities to the table. Every 6 years, U.S. senators are added onto that pile of change, and every 4 years, a U.S. president. For Utah, many things will remain the same, but the question of how our new president-elect will affect county governments is one that many are asking.
You know, I think it's overall, I'm uncertain. I think I've got a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen in the coming year and beyond. As I've thought about it and went forward and thinking about how things might change and what might happen, I see some good possibilities. Sometimes substantial change and a real major direction shift can be very helpful.
To many, the results of the presidential election came as a surprise.
Well, initially, like everybody, I think there was a little bit of surprise. I mean, all the national pundits, local pundits, everyone was anticipating a Hillary victory coming into that Tuesday. So I will say, personally, I thought there was something that the press was missing with blue-collar America. It's the guy working 2 jobs, isn't paying into a pension, isn't paying for his his kids' college education. Where were these folks going to go? And it was fascinating, in my opinion, to watch how Donald Trump obviously resonated with this type of voter.
Here in Utah, our congressional delegation remains unchanged, showing a general satisfaction among Utahns about their representation in Washington.
So it was nice to see all of our members go back to Congress, and I think we've got a good group. They're in great positions. We've got committee chairs in really important committees for Utah, obviously with Rob Bishop on doing natural resources work and then also doing armed services. It's huge for us. You've got Chris Stewart, who's doing appropriation, and then obviously Chaffetz on oversight. Not
to mention that Senator Orrin Hatch holds the second-ranking position in the U.S. Senate as President pro tem. That puts him in 3rd position to assume the presidency of the United States, behind the Vice President and Speaker of the House.
Everybody we have in our delegation, I think right now, especially in Congress, is very strong for us, does remember their connections very well, and is very good. Offers a lot of opportunities for us.
With big changes on the national stage and stability in the state, many are asking the question, what now?
My comment would be, let's get our priorities out in front of us and let's keep an eye on what we're trying to achieve. Let's get some victories and keep moving forward so we can make the communities better for everyone that lives in Utah.
How will the results of the election impact our daily lives? What differences will counties experience as changes continue to happen on the national stage? We'll answer these questions and more when we join our guest panel. For the county seat, I'm Cameron Porter.
We'll be back with more of the county seat in just a minute. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation by talking to congressional representatives and to a commissioner from a Utah county. We'll be back with the county seat in just a minute.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
Let's be honest, you don't know much about Beaver County. Well, let me tell you about it. It's the birthplace of outlaw Butch Cassidy and inventor Philo T. Farnsworth. Some of the best skiing in Utah is at Eagle Point. You've got camping, Canyon Breeze Golf Course, Crusher in the Tushers, Beaver Territorial Courthouse, snowmobiling, renewable energy, Pioneer Car Show, Squeaky Cheese, Ghost Towns to explore, best water in the country, Paiute ATV trails, Old Frisco Kilns, horse races, hunting, fishing, and it's a good place to live. Beaver County, mountains of fun. I could tell you more, but why don't you come and see it for yourself?
The Utah Farm Bureau has always been there to fight for the needs of its members. With discount programs on items ranging from vehicles and ATVs to health and wellness. The membership fees aren't big, but the results are. We've been around since 1916, and we're not leaving anytime soon. Utah Farm Bureau. We work for those who work to feed the world.
Welcome back to the county seat. We've got out the crystal ball, and way past the election time, the crystal ball maybe didn't serve exactly the way everybody thought it would, and so now we've got all these questions about what the future holds, particularly in context to county government. Trying to get a handle on some of the impressions this early on we have from Congressman Chaffetz's office, his district director, Wade Garrett. We have Bret Millburn, Davis County Commissioner. Appreciate your showing up, Bret.
Thank you.
And we have Ryan Wilcox, who's the Northern Utah Director and the Energy
Natural Resources
Advisor for Senator Lee. Thank you for joining us. I knew there was a long energy title there.
No worries.
So election night was obviously a really big surprise for a lot of people at a national level. Ended up being really predictable at a state level, and I guess everybody wants to know from the guys that talk to Washington, how shook up is the city right now?
Good question, Chad. As you can tell, we were all speechless to start right there because it is shook up. I don't think even Mr. Trump expected to win that night. As we've scrambled into mode and seen some of his early picks, there's a lot of moving parts that have made it quite interesting in D.C. The Republicans do have a little bigger smile on their face all of a sudden by holding the Senate, basically keeping our majority in the House, and now have Mr. Trump as president. So
there was a lot of tension in this race. Do you have a sense that some of that tension's evaporating, and the Senate and the House were very, very wary of this candidacy, and on the surface it's we're going to be able to work together. Is that sense that you're actually going to be able to get things done for some of the more conservative states around the nation in this environment?
I think that's certainly the natural response, is that regardless of whether or not we expected it to happen, this is the situation that we're in. We have an incoming Republican president, and there is some hope that comes with that for conservatives throughout the nation. There are, on the other side, the current administration is obviously in a different place right now.
Yeah, yes, they are.
I think to add to that, Mr. Pence, who the congressman, my boss, was able to work with early on in the U.S. Congress, we're very comfortable in working with him, and he seems to be at least a little face between Congress and the new administration, has visited with several of the congressmen and gave Speaker Ryan kind of a vote of confidence. So I think that helps bode well in some relationships that we could work together.
It seems to me like in that pick and some of the others, like they are trying to effectively work out a team play. Obviously, there's been some cabinet positions that are closely tied to the Senate, and so it seems like there's a bridge trying to be built. But that's an olive branch stretched out. Do you think the chambers are responding?
Well, in a larger perspective, I think what's kind of interesting is the election as a whole, and this whole process has been, it kind of provides an opportunity for both sides to reset. And I think if anybody back in Washington has been paying any attention, which I hope they have, is that the American people expect something different than just the status quo. And we definitely have that now, and to some degree it's kind of wait and see how it all shakes out. It's really kind of fascinating to see how the picks are going and who's being looked at and things of that nature. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out, and I hope that there's a fair amount of strategy that's being played into this as far as what President-elect Trump is doing, and seems like he's being very thoughtful in some areas, and sometimes it looks like it's a big game of what was the program he had?
Oh, Apprentice.
Apprentice. So we'll see.
Okay, well, that sets me up for my next question. We're going to take a quick commercial break here on the county seat, and we'll start with Commissioner Millburn right out of the blocks. He's got a question for him when we come back.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
When the road takes you farther than you knew possible. When the world is more beautiful than you've ever seen. When home is more comfortable than it should be. This is when you know you're in Kane County. The perfect mix of rural and urban, culture and adventure. Glendale, Orderville, Kanab, Bigwater. Small towns with more to offer than just peace and quiet. Kane County, Utah. Find the new you.
Planning your next conference or corporate event? The Davis Conference Center offers 70,000 square feet of flexible meeting and exhibit space, plus high-tech audio-visual services that will make your event a success. Whether you're planning a training, meeting, company retreat, wedding, or large convention, let the staff at the Davis Conference Center help you arrange your next event. Located east of I-15 in Layton, call 801-416-8888 or visit davisconferencecenter.com today. Color. It's something that can be seen. But have you ever wanted to reach out and touch it? Experience it. In San Juan County, Utah, color comes to life like nowhere else on earth. Color can be more than an abstract. Color can be your gateway to a new world. Visit San Juan County and explore the past, present, and future in a way that you've only dreamed of. San Juan County. Color your experience.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about the elections and what the future looks like. We kind of left on a cliffhanger. You know, the show is about local and county government. So, Bret, I wanted to ask you what your take is as an elected county commissioner. I know that you had a big event last week for Commissioner Petroff, who had his retirement party. Very nice affair. But I saw a lot of constituents there, and I saw a lot of chatter going on in the brief time I was there. So from a county level, what's your take on the next 4 years?
Well, I think there's a number of things to look at and consider. One is kind of interesting and watching to see how the myriad of appointments go, all the way from the cabinet level and then down to deputies and things like that. And those appointments and level of insight and expertise will play a part in how the departments operate. But then will be interesting to see, okay, what policies come out of that, and especially as for funding elements, because much of county government in certain aspects, like health departments, whatnot, we're very reliant upon federal dollars, and much of what we do is based upon federal statute or federal law. So right now, I think it's a little early, and it's kind of wait and see, and I'm grateful that we have fantastic leadership in our congressional folks, both on the Senate side and the House side, and I think
you would have to say that because you're flanked.
Oh, I wouldn't just say that just because I'm surrounded here, and I have a hand on each knee squeezing it. But no, we really have caliber folks back in D.C., and I think this election, and there's the possibility that the folks that we do have can rise up in stature in the various committees and and maybe even higher. So, and we have other folks that even at the Utah legislature that I think have a possibility of being involved back in DC.
One of the things that has been talked to me about as I've maneuvered around the last couple of weeks actually has to do with the nuclear option. That was a hard-fought gain during the Obama administration to make certain things happen easier, and now that ball is switched, and you already hear talk of saying, well, that's unfair, let's undo it. What are your guys' takes on that?
So taking a quote from Senator Hatch, he said at one time, basically, we'll give them a taste of their own medicine when the ball swings back around. That was quoted, I think, in a Washington Post article the other day. As far as the filibuster, and Ryan needs to speak more to that, my boss has always said that the filibuster isn't in the Constitution anyways. And outside of picks, I think that's another thing we need to remember, is the Senate is still pretty much split with the filibuster, other than for some nominations, which will be cabinet, which will make the cabinet easier probably to fill. It's still in place, so it's going to be a slog to get things through the Senate, even now, that we can't do on reconciliation, or that are these simple picks that have to go through the filibuster rules. So Ryan could probably speak more to that, because that's his side of the aisle.
The Senate rules process is difficult to understand for a lot of folks. Here in the state, and certainly in our county commissions and local government, you have a majority, you have a majority. Mm-hmm. It's 2-1 on a lot of county commissions. It's very simple, very easy to understand. Even in the state legislature, your magic numbers there are, what, 35, 15-1?
You served.
You got to have, right, 38, 15-1, I guess. It's been a few years since I've been there, so 38, 15-1. You have that, and you have a majority. In the United States Senate, it's not always just 51 votes, despite the fact that you have 100. And that has been one of the things that has plagued the minority forever, and the majority. Because even when you're in the majority, if you have 53 votes and you can't pass your agenda that was voted upon by the people in the last election, it can get quite frustrating. So I understand the temptation to use what we've called now the nuclear option. I understand the frustration with the filibuster. Yet some of my proudest moments of our senators on the Senate floor have come watching them use those very tools, watching them filibuster horrible legislation. I can think of a few times with Senator Lee and Senator Paul over these last few years when we were talking about some fairly heavy Fourth Amendment issues that all of us in Utah, frankly, we'd passed similar legislation here, but when it really mattered, and they had that tool at their disposal. So I'm not speaking for Senator Lee on this by any means, but the thought of removing those tools permanently is a little bit disconcerting.
But I mean, I guess to follow up along that, as far as picks go, for cabinet positions, I personally feel very comfortable in the Senate going ahead and confirming on party line.
Kind of like balance the playing field and fix it later.
Yeah, well, those are, and those generally have been viewed as an exception to that rule.
Until recently, it seems unless there was major concerns, most presidents have been allowed to pick their cabinets.
Yes.
It's been more recent times that you've noticed the big fights over even that.
What, probably last 10 years.
10 years. Before that, it was kind of, as long as there wasn't a major scandal behind a candidate, they figured they won the presidency, they should pick their advisors.
Right.
So I am personally okay, from a personal note, on a 51-49 split for some of these cabinets.
Let me shift directions here for a second, because while things, Senate, House, kind of stable, state offices kind of stable, there's a little turnover in commissions, but mostly through retirement. So the difference is in the presidency. That was the big news. If you had a wish list, and I know that'll be different for each of you, but that's what I'd like to spend on. A minute for a wish list. As a county, what would you like to see if there's a shakeup going on that would help counties? Is it more block grants instead of all the strings attached to federal assistance? What sorts of things would help the counties out, Bret?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's the strings that are attached to any federal funding. And oftentimes, I think if we know better at the local level than somebody sitting behind a desk or a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., what's happening in our own communities. And to have to send our money back east and have it go through the process and then come back with a heavy burden of meeting this requirement or that requirement and all the strings, it's such an inefficient way of using the taxpayers' dollars. And what ends up happening is sometimes it's defeating to really what is best for our local communities. So, you know, if the funding is going to go that way, then let's cut out the strings. But even better yet, why don't we just keep our money here before sending it back to D.C.?
Congressman Chaffetz has always championed as one of many ideas, but that one alone is the gas tax, for example. You know, at the time, there probably made sense to send the gas tax back when we was trying to do an international highway system, freeway system. But now, you take the money, collect it, and either you get more back or less back. You don't generally get the same amount back, and it just makes very little sense that we send it back and have somebody distribute it back to us. We get more bang for our buck if we kept it here, and proof to that is the freeway when it was expanded through Utah County. They ended up not using federal dollars to do that and did it almost 60 cents on the dollar to what a federal project would have cost them. So not only did they save money on that project, if we'd have just sent them the gas tax, they could have way better utilized that than coming back with all the federal strings attached and guidelines.
We're going to take a quick break. I want to ask the same question of our Washington representatives when we come back on the county seat.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo Rivers. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Have you ever wanted to recreate the world around you? Add some excitement, culture, adventure? Well, there's no need to remake the world when that perfect combination already exists. Just remember 4 words. Welcome to Weber County. In Ogden, you'll find everything you're looking for, from the top of Powder Mountain to the restaurants of our revitalized downtown. Ogden, Utah, mountain to metro and everything in between. Visit Ogden.com.
Welcome back to the county seat. We left this exciting episode with a cliffhanger, and we're going to follow it up again. If you had a wish list, Wade, what's your wish list for the new administration?
I want to return more power back to the state. Rob Bishop and my boss, and I think all of Utah's delegation have talked about that. I think Commissioner Millburn alluded to that. More power back to the states. Congressman Chaffetz always says that he was elected to represent Utah to Washington, not Washington to Utah. So, block grant ideas, more flexibility with dollars that come back, different things like that. I think that'd be the number 1 wish list. And then to work on public lands, gaining more control of some sort into our public lands so we can manage them better from the communities that they sit in instead of from an office in Washington, D.C. And I think that's one of our bigger goals. We represent a lot of rural areas in Utah, and I think that would be a really big goal. But those would be kind of the two major points, is re-empower our counties and our state.
Ryan, from the Senate standpoint, I know people think that the creatures are the same, the House and the Senate, but their mission is technically different.
The number one thing that we hear, we're talking fantasy land here, in our fantasy about what might happen. But the number one complaint that we have,
Trump Towers may be listening to this episode, so you never know.
The number one thing that we have complaints about across the state, now whether it's rural Utah, down in San Juan County, where we're dealing with potential monument designation, or Davis, Weber, Box Elder counties up more on the Wasatch Front, is what you've just identified as federal overreach. We talked during the break about what happened in Utah County with with our construction of the freeway again, and basically how at the legislature at the time we circumvented the federal money. It wasn't worth it. We saved 40%, above what we would have spent. So there are a few legislative proposals that, if on January 20th, if we could pass and get through, I would be in love. And the first one is the REINS Act. Regulation in need of scrutiny is what the acronym stands for. And what it amounts to is that we identify anything over $1 million, any regulation that an agency puts out that carries the weight of law, that impacts constituents to over $1 million, is automatically sent to Congress for debate and discussion. So it removes the ability of federal agencies, regardless of what agency it is, outside of emergency services, from making those legislative decisions on behalf of the representatives of the people. And that's important for a number of reasons. First, if you ever go to Senator Lee's office in DC, you'll see 2 stacks of paper on his desk. First one is about this high, and that consists of the law that was passed by Congress last year and signed by the president, actually voted upon, debated, and passed. It's not that high.
It's closer to this high.
It's a little
higher. It's like a fish tail, Ryan.
And then next to it, you will see a stack of paper about 11 feet tall that carry the weight of law, that are never debated in public, that are never heard on the news until they're announced, and that, frankly, most citizens have no idea they're required to live under. So that's the first one. That's the very first thing. Next one is along those lines, but I would start implementing the proposals that have come out of the Article 1 project that Congresswoman Mia Love has worked on with Senator Lee, several others, that by and large attempt to return the power and the authority for those decisions making back to the people, back to the Congress, where people have a chance for accountability.
So those would be 2 really major milestones.
Yeah.
I just heard another county seat. So we're going to ask you guys to come back and talk about this in the future. Thank you for inviting us into your homes each week on the county seat, for tuning in. Remember, local government is where your life happens. We encourage you to be involved in the process. We'll see you next week on the county seat. If you like this broadcast of the county seat and would like to see more, why don't you subscribe to our YouTube channel? Or you can check out our website or follow us on social media. If you'd like to watch a broadcast of the county seat, we're on every week, Saturday nights at 11, Sunday mornings at 8:30 on ABC4, Good for Utah.